Think to myself, what a wonderful.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Coach IVT and Me. And I am very delighted to have my special guest here, Miss Flora Ong, tonight. Am I saying your name correctly? Perfect.
Yes.
She is a dating coach, and she is going to be talking to us tonight. I'm delighted. One of the things we're going to be talking about is attachment styles, which I'm delighted to take a deep dive into because I've heard so much about this and don't know much about it. So I'm excited to hear about that. But before we do that, I want Miss Flora to introduce herself and tell us a little bit about her background and how you became a dating coach, and we will take it from there. So thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. My background, I got divorced about 5+ years ago after a 14-year marriage and 2 kids. And I had never seen a dating app in my life.
Wow.
And although I had heard about them from friends and was always like a little jealous, that like it seemed like a lot of fun. And I got on the apps and I had, at first it was kind of overwhelming and a load of fun and a lot of exploration and all this stuff. And I also noticed after a while, like in having a lot of fun, that, nothing was really sticking. And then I started to wonder why. And the more that I went down that rabbit hole, the closer it led me to what I do now. I struggled a lot, in that, like, after post-divorce dating situation, I had a toxic relationships. I was going after unavailable people. I was, doing all the things that, I say a lot, like I was like a 16-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of, falling in love like over and over and over again and not understanding why there was no reciprocation. But I was 40 years old, give or take, and I had 2 kids and I was not 16. And, it was, but, it's what was very glaring about it was you feel like you're supposed to know.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You're like, I'm an adult now and, I have children and, this means that I should know how to do this basic thing, but it's not the same game anymore. And it's not, it's a very different experience than when you're young. So,
It's interesting you should say that, because one of the things I noticed is, at least when I was 16, I don't know about when you were 16, it was so much more fun. I feel like there's a heaviness about it. And maybe that's, because of respectively, like my background as being a divorced person. I think as we age, there's a seriousness in it that wasn't there when you were 16.
Well, yeah.
And it makes it really heavy. And so I don't think we enjoy the process very much at all.
Yeah.
I feel like it's more of a means to an end. And I think that's part of the problem. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think that, what happens is the older you get, the more experiences you have, the more hurt you have, the more pain you've been through, the more you're trying to protect yourself from getting hurt again. And so, it either comes with the, I have to do this again, here we go again kind of thing. And, you kind of like have this feeling you're jaded, you hate everybody, nobody's good enough, nobody's ever going to be good enough, that kind of thing, which is all really a subconscious protective mechanism, because you don't want to get hurt again.
Of course.
And, or you're like clingy, rushing in, running into anything, hoping that something will stick, because you are so afraid to be alone, that, you're willing to just take on anything, but things aren't sticking because you're not really like in your authentic self, let's say,
Right.
Word.
So what brought you to the dating coaching? Like when you were, you're looking at your life, you're going, I'm divorced, you're dating. This doesn't feel like I'm 16 anymore. It's more serious, more heavy. And I want a better, obviously I want better choices. What kind of got you from there to being a dating coach?
Well, I think, what got me there? Okay, so I studied to be a health and life coach, actually. So that's what my certification is in. And I was doing that, but the dating thing was much more of a pressing like issue for me. And as time progressed and as my dating experience progressed and as I, learned more, and then I actually became a matchmaker in this process. I switched careers. And when I switched careers, I became a matchmaker and started to talk to people daily about dating, right? Everything kind of like fell into place. It all kinds of made sense that I had to switch my niche into becoming a dating and relationship coach.
So in matchmaking, I'm presuming you, and I don't know, but you talk to both men and women. You help men and women vet men and women, right? So you
Yes,
get
exactly
uniquely both sides of the coin. I'd love to
right.
know what, I think we have more in common, men and women, than we think we do. but I think there are differences we can appreciate. But I would love to hear from you, like what was the biggest challenge for women, and then what was the biggest challenge for men
in
dating, like really like engaging the opposite sex. So when they you for in whichever capacity, dating or matchmaking, which really there's a component of, I'm sorry, for coaching or matchmaking, and I'm sure there's a huge component of coaching in matchmaking built into it, or I presume, is there?
Yeah. I mean, it's all, I think that a lot of times people are just overall, and I'm trying to think like specifically men and women, and maybe I'll get there in a minute, but I just think overall people are afraid to be vulnerable, to say what they want, and to express themselves. And sometimes they don't even know what they want, right? Or they don't even know what they're feeling. They don't understand what they're feeling. They think they do because they've been taught that this feeling means something, or they've assigned a certain meaning to what they're feeling. But in reality, that's not what's going on at all. And so people end up reacting to their feelings, and whether that's, anger, frustration, ghosting, whatever your reaction is, but it's not necessarily accurate to what is happening in the situation. So
can you give me an example of that? So say more about that.
Somebody doesn't call you back or doesn't text back, right? You're kind of expecting maybe to go on a date, or you've chatted with this person a couple of times. You're expecting them to get back to you. They haven't gotten back to you in a time that like feels comfortable for you. You start getting nervous. You start thinking like, oh, what's going on? What's going on? And then you are like, forget it. If they're not going to get back to me when I want them, I'm blocking them. I don't need to deal with this. Right. And so you block them, and then that thing never goes anywhere. Right. Or especially like even simpler on dating apps. People are chatting all the time. Conversations fall off all the time, right? It's the most like normal thing in the world. Well, I have a friend right now that's like texting me and telling me, this guy, we were supposed to meet, and then I gave him my phone number, and then he disappeared from the app. Like he deleted his account, and she's sitting here for like 2 days now. We're having a conversation about why did he delete? What happened? Like, this is not, this is so not important, right? But here we get into our own heads about these little details, and we assign meaning to these things that really we have no explanation for, and there is no meaning necessarily behind it, right?
Right.
He didn't disappear from the app because he doesn't like you. He asked for your phone number, right? Like, he disappeared from the app. God knows why.
Right.
Who knows?
Right.
Right. But for for us to be sitting there, us as people in general, to be sitting there questioning, wondering, making it mean something about ourselves, then losing confidence in the next conversation that we have, and then it goes on and on and on, right? Rather than seeing it for what it is, which is just this meaningless thing that kind of happened.
And that's a tough one for many women when there's a pattern. So you're right. It is like, if a guy ghosts you, he ghosts you. I mean, I've ghosted guys, right?
Right.
When I do the same thing. So I'm driving along, somebody cuts me off. 3 minutes later, I cut somebody else off, not because I'm deliberately cutting them off. I missed my turn. I forgot. I have to get over. It's really not about them. It's about what I'm trying to accomplish in the moment. And I cut. So a lot of times when people do that, I'll just say, this person cut you off. And I'm sure in your life, you've cut many people off, Ivy. Like, don't make this about, you get road rage and you give me like, oh my gosh, they cut you off. I'm like, yeah. And so what? I'm sure you, me, him, her, whoever has cut people off. And we do it all the time. And it's not about you. It's about they're late. Their kids are yelling. Their boss just demanded. Their phone is chiming. They got other stuff going on. It's not about me. No. That being said, if I'm a person that is this is my 5th accident where I've been sideswiped. In my mind, I'm going, what is it about me?
Right.
That has people want to sideswipe the car. Why do they do that to me? And so I think generally, and especially when you look at online dating, because it's a numbers game. You've got 100 guys, you got to figure X% are going to ghost, X% are going to get your number and never call, X% you're going to do this and this again. If you look in totality, it's probably not a big deal. But I know for some women, we get into this, and we've been told this, and it's not untrue. I'm the constant in my experience. Why is my experience this way?
Right.
We make up a story about why that is, and then insert guy, right? Change his name, insert guy. How do we get away from that to get to what you said? Like, it is really, he just isn't the one. Like, there doesn't be any other explanation than that, but we're really caught up in that.
Yeah.
It defines us in some ways.
Yeah. Well, that's, where you have to worry about like the meaning that you assign to things, right? And our stories that we create over things. But what you're alluding to actually is exactly what, we are here to talk about, which is attachment styles, right? So
great. I got there and I wasn't even trying to get there. I'm glad. So yeah. Let's go there. Let's talk about attachment styles.
It's the thing is, that there's there's a subconscious issue anytime you are experiencing a repeated pattern in something that's going on in your life. So there's, definitely something subconscious, and your attachment style kind of dictates your needs and coping mechanisms in a relationship, right? And so your attachment style your attachment style is decided by how your parents emotionally, or your caretakers, whoever raised you, emotionally attuned to you when you were a kid. So what is emotional attunement? It means that they helped you to, they allowed you to have emotions. They supported your emotions. They helped you process your emotions, and they helped you repair your emotions, right?
Wow.
And you're like, whose parents did that?
I'm sitting here thinking, like, you should get that like 101, like in college or something, or instead of Lamaze class,
at the hospital.
It's a waste of my time, exactly. Right? I would rather have spent an hour talking about this than that.
Yeah,
that is super amazing. Like, and in depth, very thorough understanding of that. So if that's the case, and I think we can all say there's probably gaps in all a few things that mom and dad didn't do exactly, or caregivers didn't do exactly well. So we're then left with a style of coping or interacting with other human beings that is residual from those childhood experiences.
Exactly. It's how you learn to attach to people, and it's how you learn to attach to in relationship. And so the reason it comes up most in love relationships is because that's the most comparable to your parental relationships, right? I think I'm going to butcher this quote, and I have it somewhere, but Elsa, oh my God, and now I'm forgetting her name. Sorry, I've been on vacation for 3 weeks, so my brain is
totally get it.
Really famous, really wonderful relationship guru woman, Why can't I remember her name? By the end of this call, I'll remember. But she said something like, if you tell me what your relationship is like, I'll tell you what your relationship with your parents is like,
Okay.
was like, you know?
Mhm.
So essentially, it's just, you know, it's a mapping for your future relationships. Yeah.
So once you get the map, can you
Mhm.
change the map, adapt the map, alter the map?
Yeah.
Or the map, like, for this is it, amen. You're just
Yes. And you will probably always have the certain characteristics of your attachment style. And we can talk about there's 4 attachment styles. We can talk about them, but you will probably have, until you're in a very secure long-term relationship,
Mm.
you will probably have, you know, feelings and experience your attachment style um, until you're in a really healthy long-term relationship, more than likely.
So that's kind of an oxymoron, right? I have to get in a relationship to develop a different relationship style, like
Not exactly. So what happens is you can there, it's called earn secure. So I should probably tell you what the attachment styles are, so that,
Oh,
like,
yes,
there's
please enlighten us.
that we can get a understanding of how to get to the good place. But so the good place, let's say, is secure. So a secure attachment style means your parents did properly attune to you emotionally. They showed you, you know, they helped you to repair your emotions. They helped you to process and all that kind of stuff. And so you grow up with a healthy relationship to relationships, right? You think people on the whole are good. You're comfortable setting boundaries because you don't think that setting a boundary is going to ruin the relationship. You don't think it's going to push anybody away because you've had that modeling in childhood, right? You are comfortable expressing your emotions because you don't feel like it's too much, because
Right.
nobody ever told you, oh, it's too much when you say I care about you, or I really like you, or I think you're great, right? Things that a lot of people are afraid to say out loud, right? Even though they feel that way. And then you also have a healthy relationship with rejection, right? So you don't take rejection to mean something about you. You realize that rejection means that, oh, well, you know, this wasn't the right match. This wasn't the right relationship. It's unfortunate. I think you're a great person, but I'm going to go move on and, you know, live my life, you know.
I always say rejection is the universe's protection.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But we don't always see it that way, right? Like,
No,
we
we
feel
don't.
like I'm bad. There's something wrong with me, that this person didn't want to be with me,
It
kind of.
feels personal. It feels that way even when, forget relationships, you don't get accepted to the school you want, you don't get the job, you don't get the promotion. It feels
Right.
like I'm not being chosen.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a big word in this attachment style conversation, like not feeling chosen, because ultimately, right, we all want to feel accepted. We all want to feel chosen. We all want to feel a part of something, and especially in relationship, right? Because it's the most natural and normal thing in the world to want to be in relationship.
Of course, of course.
And then, okay, so then there's 3 insecure attachment styles. The first one is the anxious attachment style. And this is in no particular order, by the way. It's just, so the anxious attachment style. With anxious attachment, what happened in childhood was that there was an inconsistent care, parenting or care, right? So sometimes your parents were available and they were great and they were there for you, and then sometimes they weren't available. And because sometimes they weren't available, you never knew when they were coming back. Because, mind you, this all happens between the ages of 0 and 3.
Okay.
So you never, at 3 years old, you have no sense of time, right? So if your parent says, oh, I'll be back at 8, you know, for you at 3 years old, from 2 to 8, it's like a lifetime, right? You have no idea whether they're coming back or when they're coming back. And so it creates this desperation and this waiting and this, like, are you ever coming back? Will you, you know, will I ever see you again? Like, and this nervousness and this anxiety, right? And that's how anxious attachment is developed. And as an adult, it's your kind of typical person that is really, I don't want to assign like a gender to it, right? Because usually we'd
Right,
say
right.
female, but males experience this just as much, where, you kind of fall in love too quickly, right?
Okay.
You romanticize very early on in the relationship. Like you go on 2 dates and you're like, oh my God, he's so great. He's so great. She's so great. Oh my God, like I'm in love. This is the guy. Like whether you are this person or you have friends that are like this, we
Or
all
you've
know.
dated this person. You
Yeah,
might have even
yeah.
dated this person yourself, where
Right.
they're like, this guy is professing his undying love for me. It's date number 2, and he's
Yeah.
picking out China patterns. It's very
You're
strange.
right.
Yeah.
Right. Right. So, um, so these people need a lot of validation and a lot of reassurance in relationship in general. I'm anxiously attached, by the way. And we'll talk about getting towards secure, and I'll take you through that process later. But and so yeah, there's like a lot of reassurance that's needed. There's a lack of self-worth at the bottom of it is really what the issue is, because of that inconsistency in childhood. You are always worried about where your parent is, so you forget to focus on yourself.
Right.
Right, like not even forget, but you just don't, your mind is over external, right? So you're always looking for external validation even as an adult. And I've had a lot of people come to me and say, my relationships with my family or my relationships are the number one most important thing to me, and they're very proud of it, and they think that that makes them like, this really like
Great person. Yeah.
yeah, and forgetting that they exist too, and that they're important too, and are their needs being met, and are, that kind of thing. And so that's anxious attachment. And then you have avoidant attachment style, which is your typical kind of playboy, playgirl, they never settle down type of person. Now, this person in childhood recognized very early on that their parents would never meet their needs for attention. And so for whatever reason, the parent wasn't available. Maybe the parent was avoidant themselves and didn't know how to properly show love or handle emotion in general. And or on the opposite end of that, their parents could have been very overwhelming, like almost like a helicopter parent, where the
Right.
child was like, whoa, too much,
Right.
like this is like too much. So the child then finds kind of comfort in like a blankie, let's say, or things or toys or video games, as they get older and stuff. And they disassociate the need for not, I don't want to say human connection because that's not true, but they really grow up feeling like, I've never needed anyone and I don't want anyone to need me.
Right.
So as soon as anybody in relationship, like, a month in, whatever, 2 months in, it's like, oh, let's take this to the next level. They're like, no,
Right.
no
Right.
thanks. Like, I will not be responsible for you. And I don't expect
Mm.
you to be responsible for me. So, like, no, that's not going to happen kind of thing.
Yeah.
And they're very overwhelmed by, by commitment and by intimacy. And to the point where all of this, and we can talk about as much as we can, but like, all of this lives in your body and in your nervous system, right? That's why the
Right.
anxiety, it's like a real thing. It's like in your nervous system, right? And with the avoidant, they go into a freeze mode, right? So they shut down. Like they're the types that are more likely to ghost. Not to say that all avoidants are ghosters, but more than likely to ghost. They do not like confrontation, and they have like a fear of intimacy,
That makes
overall.
perfect sense.
Right.
They would feel overwhelmed by the whole, by someone being, even for them sounds like if being attentive, but attentive beyond what they were used to, or could adapt to, or could even set boundaries around. It gets
Right.
too much for them, and that has them pull back.
Right, exactly. It has them shut down. And then the last attachment style is the fearful avoidant. also, there's a lot of names for all attachment styles. So if you look them up, it might get a little confusing because every attachment style has like 3 or 4 names for whatever reason. But nevertheless, fearful avoidant is a mix of actually both anxious and avoidant.
Mhm.
And what happens is this is a small percentage of the population.
Mhm.
And more than likely, these kids were abused in childhood in some real serious way, like what sexual, mental, emotional, physical. And they learned that the people that love them also hurt them.
Yeah. Yeah. What a mixed message that is.
Yeah. So when they go out into the world seeking relationship, they're very hot and cold, right? So they like really want relationship because of course they want love. We all want love. Even the avoidants who seem like they don't, they also want love. But so they'll come off anxious possibly early on in the beginning, but then as soon as the other person comes close to them, they'll pull away because they're afraid of getting hurt, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, so how do you move from, so there's only 3 attachment styles.
4. So the 4th is the secure one.
Secure one. Okay.
Yeah.
So is the secure one like the ideal one you want to move toward? Like, and I don't want to say it like that. Well, so a lot of times style is style. There's not a better one. It's just when you know who you are, you know then a little bit about what you need to look for. What's your complement? What complements you're looking for?
Exactly.
Like that. So I don't want to make it seem like that. But is there a goal? Is one more? I don't know. I don't even want to say.
Yeah.
The
The ideal, you're like, it's a bad word.
Because people will go around going, I want to be this one. It's better. Like, and it's not better. It just is.
It's not. It's not because it's like, I'm anxious. I've had an avoidant friend be like, oh, I wish I was anxious. This being avoidant is horrible. Yeah. And I'm like, no, you don't want to be anxious. I want to be avoidant, so it's like the grass is always greener kind of thing. But secure is ideal, right? Because the secure person does not have the physical reactions in conflict as so much as the others do. They are able to stay calm in kinds of in argument or in conflict resolution because again they learned that in childhood and it was modeled to them, while our nervous system, the insecure attachment style, it goes like all over the place when there is something to deal with, some sort of conflict, some sort of discomfort, right? It's not just like, oh, well, let's resolve this. Oh my God, I'm going to die. Or, that's
I can't believe they said that about me.
Yeah. Yeah. So it really hits. And that's the trick of this whole thing. We have a reaction and we think with our head, like this is what happened, but it has nothing to do with what our head and what our brain is telling us. It's all what's happening in the body, right?
That's actually really, really key. Because I know, I'll speak for myself. I often will say, well, you're really heady about this. Like, it's like, you're all up in here and I can feel myself spinning, for lack of a better term. There's random thoughts. They're not going anywhere and it's not resolving anything. And yet I'm ignoring the discomfort that's below the neck and that's where the spinning is coming from. I'm just trying to process what's happening down here, up here, and it's disconnecting. And I'll be like, God, you're so heady. That's you're all up in here. Like, why don't you go sit somewhere? My grandfather has this great saying. Some of the people out there probably heard me say, my grandfather would say, go make yourself even. And you don't get it as a kid, but now I'm like, I'll tell myself that now you need to go make yourself even. Like, you're really not connected to like, what is it you're feeling? Like, be with that. Don't label it. Just sit with it, sit in the soup of it, let it happen and get out of your head. Cause you're really like in your head and it's actually driving you bananas.
No, it's beautiful that you're saying that. And it's all very accurate, like the first, and it's, it goes back to that old saying, like, don't react when you're angry or don't do anything when you're angry, right? Like it is really not because it's because you can't make a conscious, like grounded decision
Right.
when your emotions are activated. It's just not possible. You know, you're not going to make a decision that is going to be thoughtful and you know, and make a lot of sense. You know, you're going to do those things that you're like, I shouldn't do that. I shouldn't send that text. You know, like all those like, shit, did I send that?
But you make me laugh. My favorite is it Leslie? Oh my God, I can't think of her name. Leslie Jones, and she has this whole skit. It's called Time Machine. Her way to stand up, and she does this whole thing about texting. She goes, I don't know why they invented texting. Like, it is my nemesis in dating. It's probably why I'm still single, because I'll be like, I can't believe that, you know, your mother is this, that, and the other. And then she'll go, I can't believe I said that about you. Gladys is the nicest person in the world. She was like, because when and some of it may be based on her real life, but the gist of it was, when I feel something, I text something and it never goes well for me.
Yeah.
And it's probably the worst invention. She was joking about it
Right.
for dating, because we need to have distance between what we're thinking and feeling in the moment and sending it off to the person. But it's so real time, and then they don't answer, and then we answer it for them because we've got that story, like you were saying earlier. How come you're not answering my text? I think Kevin Hart says that some joke about him, his wife or somebody texting him, and he had fallen asleep or passed out at his friend's house. So he wakes up to something like 21 text messages. He goes, but she's having a conversation with herself about what I've done, and I haven't done anything. Oh, you're not going to text me back? So this is what we're doing now, right? He goes, answering her every text, she's answering herself.
Her own questions.
Exactly. He goes, it was just bad. It was, you know, and so we joke about it, but it's very true. We get into, we have a reaction, and then we just kind of put it out there.
Yeah. And it's, you know, those are the things that you need to learn to work with, right? Like anytime you're having a reaction, anytime you're upset about anything, really, that is, to your point, like, get yourself even, right? Like to your grandfather.
Go make yourself even.
Go make yourself even. Yeah. Like, first chill out, then let's figure out what to do.
Absolutely. Or even, I'm sure people do this for work. They may not do it as much in their dating life, but like, write the email, just don't send it. Like, if you need to get it out, you can write sometimes I write text and notes and then leave it. I need to say it because I want my thoughts. And then I don't even put it under their name in the text, because I might hit send accidentally, and then that creates
by accident.
But I at least put it in there, and then I go back usually, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I didn't send that. What an idiot.
Every time. I've never once looked back at one of those notes and thought to myself, oh, I should have sent that.
That was spot on. You were so right. I've never had that happen either. Never, not once.
Funny, that's actually the first time I've had that recognition. So thank you for reminding me, because I have a load of them from, like, you know, these last 5 years of me like dating and, you know, wanting to send these texts, and sometimes sending, sometimes not. But I'm usually pretty good about, and I guess and it might be from my own background was in HR, and so in my mind I'm like, everything's discoverable. And so I'm like, what do you want them to discover about you? Think about this, because it's meaningful. So what is it that you want them to discover? And then I'm like, well, just write it, because you clearly you're upset and you need to get it out. Then go make yourself even. If you really feel that strongly about it tomorrow, then it's something that's important. Then, you go ahead and send it. You're right. I've never ended up sending the original text. I've amended it. I've cut it in half. I've edited it. I might even sent it to somebody to review for me, but I've never sent the original text ever. I hate to have to do this, but my doorbell is ringing. Can
sure.
Take 2 seconds? I'm
sure.
So sorry.
I heard a beep. I was like, I hope we're not running out of.
No, just quick, 2 seconds. Sorry.
Sure. So thank you all for tuning in while she goes to check her doorbell. For those of you that are tuning in, if you have questions to ask, drop them in the comment section. I will be sure to ask her these questions as we move forward. And certainly if you have questions after the fact, please drop them in the comments and we'll make sure. All right.
Sorry about that.
No, totally okay. We all set? You all set?
Yeah.
Awesome. So how do you then build the bridge from your current attachment style to where you want to be, or discover your complement? I guess that's part two. We'll save that for a second, because my next one is about how do you use that to date. But how do you build the bridge to from where you are to growing yourself to a stronger version of that?
The different attachment styles require slightly different, focuses, let's say, because they're so different, right? You have the avoidant that needs space, right? And needs, basically needs space. That's their big thing, right? And then you have the anxious person who needs a lot of attention and who has like being alone. And so they need slightly different things. They also have different coping mechanisms of the way that they deal with stuff, right? The anxious person goes into their fight or flight mode, nervous system, anxiety, and the avoidant person goes into the freeze mode, right? But ultimately, there's a lot of nervous system work that has to happen. And so that's like the beginning.
That, like, explain nervous system work. I haven't heard it language that way. So share with us about that.
So it's basically like, any kinds of body work. So it just kind of depends what works for you. Is it exercise? Is it meditation? Is it, there's, lots of different therapies, right? There's EMDR, there's NLP, which also works for this as well. And it's anything like kind of that's body focused and subconscious focused, right? What that is relevant for all of them is that the work is subconscious and not conscious talk therapy, right? Because that conscious talk therapy that we do, while it's very helpful and it's not, not to invalidate it in any way, it doesn't really hit the problem, because I knew what my problems were. I talked about them. I wrote them down. I'm writing a book, right? Like I was writing a book the whole way through. Like I knew everything that was wrong. I was setting the rules to dating, yet I was still continuing to make the same mistakes over and over again, because subconsciously, if your subconscious isn't up to par with your thoughts, it doesn't matter how clearly you can think about something,
So is that what the goal is to get your subconscious to marry with your conscious thought? Because you're right. If you're thinking, we all know, and weight loss is always a good one.
I always use that. Yeah.
We need to eat more fruits and vegetables.
Right.
But here it is, I'll even speak for myself. I just came from vacation, but I had also leftovers, and I had like some bundt cake, and I'm snacking on this bundt cake. And the whole time I'm like, I'm not even sure if I wanted it. So I stopped eating it, actually, which was a good catch. But I don't know why I picked it up in the first place. I guess just to finish it off, more subconscious. You always clean your plate. You don't waste food, blah, 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 blah. We've all been down there, right?
And
right?
It's such a comforting.
It's comforting. I just finished. I'm sort of tired. You come home, you got to do a lot of laundry. So all that's going on in the background. Meanwhile, half of a bundt cake, a third of a bundt cake, slice of bundt cake later, you're like, I didn't even want this, right? Because you're on autopilot. And it's not that I don't know that, and I'm not, anybody that knows me, they know me on my channel, like I'm a sweet hound, but I also have smoothies. I also eat fruits and vegetables. I also do lots of challenges around health and wellness. So it's not I don't know better. It's in the moment, what happened in that moment that made me choose what I chose in that moment.
Right.
And it get there with dating.
Yeah. And so
that might be a loaded question. I mean,
no. I mean, it's not that it's a loaded question, but everything is a process, right? And it's not that quick. And it's like with weight loss, right? Exactly. To that point, it takes time, and it's not going to happen overnight. And if it does happen overnight, then you're going to gain it back very quickly.
True.
Right.
Yeah. It's hard.
Yeah, because we've all been on those crash diets where we lose 10 pounds in a week, and then the following week we've gained 15 pounds, or by the end of the following
doing the Jenny Craig pose. I've lost 10 pounds, and next week you're like, oh, where are my fat pants? I can't get.
So it's kind of, with this work, it's kind of the same. It's the same thing. I run a program that really helps people to get into their subconscious, and we deal a lot with the triggers that got us our attachment styles. And when we deal with what those are, how did we end up with this attachment style, right? And obviously it all goes back to childhood stuff. Then we can really start to address what's the issue, because you feel, as an anxious person, like, and in my process of dating these people and having these failed relationships, right? What I was noticing was that I would start to date someone and I would really like them, and they seemed to kind of like me, and then things would fall off for whatever reason. And I was left with this like feeling, and then I was thinking, I'm in love with this guy. I'm in love with this guy. Next guy comes along. I'm in love with this guy. I'm in love with this guy. Feelings the same. Next guy comes along. I'm in love with this guy. I'm in love with this guy. Feelings the same, right? And so what I started to realize, even before I knew anything about attachment style, it was an insert guy, any guy here type of situation.
Right.
It had nothing to, it didn't matter. I wasn't in love with him. It was this feeling that I was having. I kept having this feeling over and over. And, they do ask you in therapy or in meditation, I don't even remember at this point a lot of times, when was the first time you felt this? And I'm like, I don't know when the first time I felt this was.
Many months ago. Does that count as a response, right?
I don't know. Yeah. But, with the work that I do, we dig deep enough, and I have discovered like exactly where that, when I did feel it, I was 7 years old sitting on the stairs waiting for my mom to come home, every day. And she didn't call, and she didn't, their cell phones were, back in the day. I'm not going to age myself.
There were no cell phones. Right? You're on your own. Right? Yeah, I talk about that with my friends often. If you couldn't get your mom at work, you're on your own. That was it. It was either she was home or work, right? That's it.
Yeah. And the cell, she did have one of those big fat box cell phones, but they weren't reliable, right? And whatever. So we dig down and we figure out where that, what that pain point is, where it's coming from, and then process and reprogram it. And then you can live a little freer, because you're not holding on to that wound anymore. And that is really the magic, is in really like feeling that pain, which that's what a lot of people are protecting themselves from in dating, right? Without even realizing it, right? We're just all unconsciously trying to protect ourselves, from.
It's an interesting thing, because another sort of oxymoron, you almost pick or attract the person that is most likely to produce that response that you then protect yourself from feeling, because your body, your subconscious remembers that it sucked. It sucked to be dating somebody who is unavailable. It sucked to be dating someone who's physically abusive. And yet we tend to gravitate. And I know there's lots of psychological talk about the reason for that is to heal those wounds specifically, like you're trying to do that. But it's such an interesting paradigm,
that is true. And what is also true is that your subconscious is comfortable with the familiar.
Yes. It knows how to deal with the abuser, the avoiding person, the unavailable person. It knows how to deal with those people. And so it's most comfortable putting you in that scenario because you know what to do. Right. It'll guide you through what to do.
Right. And it's most afraid of the unknown.
Yeah. More afraid of the unknown than anything else that was horrible that is known.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Another kind of weird oxymoron. It's like, wait a minute, you'd rather be in the same awful relationship that you had as a kid in your marriage than actually take a chance on being with somebody who's really healthy. But when you think about your subconscious and how we're wired, because those relationships are safe because they're known, and your subconscious, your body is programmed for safety, not success. And so, yeah,
Exactly.
that unknown is so, I
Uh-huh.
might be more successful, or I might completely crash and burn. Let's just stay over here with what we know, even though we know this is probably not going to go like we wanted to, but at least we know how to cope with that. We can cope.
Right.
We will
Exactly.
bounce back.
We have the coping mechanisms for that, and we know how to deal with it. Exactly right. Yeah.
Well, we know we're going to be okay because we're okay now, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
Well, this
so
is
fascinating.
okay. You know, we're okay. The problem is that okay, that subconscious okay,
Yeah.
is like a lot of times down here.
Yeah,
It's
it's not a good okay. It's not a
Yeah,
happy okay.
yeah,
It's not a healthy okay. It's what I call de minimis. It's the least of us, the least of where we could
Right.
be, because it's the easiest place for us to go to, because it's the safest place for us to go.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So how do we, there's obviously a process, and, you know, certainly we're not going to cover all that here. It sounds like it's involved, and that's actually, given that you were parented for multiple years by people, it's highly doubtful that in a, 42-minute conversation that we're going to undo it. But I would love to hear, like, where could someone get started with even beginning that process of being, understanding their attachment style, and then what might be a first step?
Well, you definitely want to read the book Attached, because that's by Amir Levine. That book is the kind of premier book that linked the attachment theory with adult relationships. And it gives you the basis of all of this information, and it's really enlightening. And then after that,
I'll look that up, Amir
Levine.
I will drop it in the comments for
definitely
watching. Yes.
Yeah, it's a really important thing. And then you can come and work with me. I mean, what else would you do?
What else would you do? Right. And so for those people that want to come and work with you, I know, and I'm going to drop all this in our links in there. And I did it also. You have an attachment style quiz on your webpage, which I highly recommend that everybody take. I took the attachment style quiz. I was actually kind of surprised by it. Not surprised bad, surprised good. I have a secure attachment style. But I was answering the questions, and I guess this was interesting, like how my mind works, is I was looking for sort of this, I was kind of thinking, I was like, oh, sometimes, and I'm like, these sometimes answers are really going to get me in trouble. But I remember thinking, well, wait a minute, but I remember a couple of them, I'm like, it's not true. You do it sometimes. And I think that's right. Nobody could, no, you're not, like I had put like always on one, and I was like, you don't do that always, you do it sometimes. And then I thought, yeah, that's right. I mean, I guess if I get dinged, I'll take my lumps for wherever it comes out. But I remember thinking that. But it's an interesting thing, because I always, on a lot of, like, my goal in life is harmony. And so a lot of my tests show up harmonious, because, but not, you said attachment styles develop for the first 3 years of your life, right? That's when you
for the most part. I mean, they can change, by the way, through life, like especially if there's major trauma, divorce, like big life things that happen, like toxic relationships, your attachment style can change. But typically it's developed in the first 3 years.
The first 3. So interestingly enough, my parents are divorced. First of all, I come from a long line of people being divorced, so it's in my DNA. My sister and I were joking about this, and I was like, yeah, and we may not get it right on the first, but we do get it right on the second.
Right.
But having said that, the first 3 years, I could say the first 5, I have some memories of my, just flashes, but I felt loved. And there's lots of pictures to prove it. Like that was their best time, where they were probably the most in sync. Then my parents had the absolute worst tumultuous relationship from the time I was like maybe 6-ish, 7-ish, all through college. It was awful. So it's interesting when you said the first 3 years, I was like, well, maybe that's why, because at that time it was balanced. They were loving, they were open. My father was available. He played with me. My mother was happy. Everybody was healthy. And then after that, it was just like, you guys are out there. Like
Yeah.
they fought all the time.
Uh-huh.
And so when I was answering the questions, I just kept thinking, this is going to come out. It'll be interesting to see what this is like, because I'm like, I'm looking at the, having done this, you're looking at me like, I can tell this is going somewhere, but I'm interested to see what it's going. And I was kind of surprised, even the places I put, okay, yeah, that's definitely
right.
Or other places I put, yeah, that's definitely me. Rarely. I was really kind of surprised that it came out that way. But I mean, it's a good thing.
I mean, it's not a fixed thing all the time also, just by the way, like, especially if you're, if you're feeling in a good place, you might get a secure outcome. If you're feeling like a little bit insecure, you're in a relationship, somebody's not calling you back, you're extra anxious about it, you might get a different result. And so it does change based on that. It's not like a perfect test. It's also self-reported, right? So there's you
don't have another feedback loop with how you're actually occurring to other people.
Right. Nobody's got like, those things on you and like is measuring your attachment style and telling you this is, scientifically. But what I will say about attachment styles different from love languages is that the attachment style conversation, because it's based in childhood attachment theory, it's a very, very well-reviewed, supported science. It's a real psychological science. It's not something that is kind of, it's not pop psychology. It's real deal psychology,
That makes sense. And actually, thank you for making that distinction, because one of the things I heard somebody was going to do on Clubhouse was love languages, not a versus, and how to marry that with attachments. I didn't end up going to the room. I thought it would be a great room. I just didn't, I didn't end up going, but I thought it was interesting because now love languages is so mainstream, which is interesting because, I don't know, when I first read the book, I don't know, how long did it come out? Like many years ago.
10 years ago.
Yeah. You would go on a date and it would be almost like, us women, we're like, I'm trying to figure out this guy's love language. I get guys asking me all the time or like putting it in or trying to guess my love language because it's so prevalent. And I find that interesting that even now the men are like into it. And it's an interesting thing.
So I do believe that love languages has a place, and I don't think that it's off the mark. It's just it's not a psychological, it doesn't have psychological basis, but there is accuracy there. And I think it is important because it does teach us that, like, some people really do show love with like acts of service, for example, but they're not the most verbal, right? They don't necessarily say all the nice things and, aren't necessarily like saying all the things that you want to hear, but then they'll, show up and wash your car or like, show up and fix stuff around the house and, do those kinds of things. And so, yet you're still sitting there being like, but why didn't he say that he likes me?
Right. And that's because you need those words of affirmation. But he doesn't, or vice versa.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't. Have you heard of the language of apology?
No, I have not.
I read a book on that too. And I always think of that because I think of my mom and my stepdad. And my mother said, I think they've been married almost now 20 years. He's ever said he's sorry. However, I do know when he's apologizing because he cooks for me and he says, I'd like you to taste something, and he feeds me. And that is his I'm sorry.
Okay. That's interesting.
It's the beginning of an I'm sorry. She goes, but I don't know that I've ever heard him say, I'm really sorry for what I said, what I did, what is happening, anything. His love language is acts of service. So it's also his language of apology. If he's apologizing in any way, he uses acts of service to do it. So he never says it. It's just an interesting thing, but there's a whole language of apology. And I think I saw it, it's either on YouTube, it's another pop psychology thing. There was a book, and I think I read up on that too, which is just fascinating. So and I'm not to derail us from that.
No. I think it's really interesting.
Yeah. What do you do now? Because everybody's going to run out, take their attachment style and go, who should I be dating? Like, should I be looking for, how do you use it in the dating arena? Like, how is it useful to you? How do you apply this information? Because now everybody's got so many insights about themselves, love languages, language of apology, Myers-Briggs, what is it? DISC method, behavioral style.
And we're still all a mess.
And we're still like, now I've got 27,000 assessments. And I saw how do you seduce? There's another one, how you seduce men, your seductive archetype. I mean, there's all kinds.
Wonder what mine is.
I'll send you. It's a really interesting. There's a couple of them. They're all very interesting.
I know.
Right?
There's a bunch of quizzes there.
There's tons of them. They're all very interesting. But so what? Or so now what? Right? What do we do with this information, with attachment styles? How do I use that to engage? Like, what is the best way for me to utilize that? I mean, now I know myself. What am I looking for in a guy to compliment, or how do I figure that out for him? What do I do with that?
So with the attachment styles, the most coveted person to date is always going to be somebody secure. Mm-hmm. So the secure person is comfortable to give the anxious person more attention. It doesn't take anything out of them or away from them. Mm-hmm. It doesn't scare them. It doesn't frighten them oh, you need some more attention? Okay, sure. You want me to call you more? You want me to text more? I care about you. Of course I will. Mm-hmm. And with an avoidant person, oh, you need more space? No problem. I'm secure. So I'm happy to give you space. It doesn't mean that you don't like me. Just, I hear you. You're telling me you need space. No problem. The problem happens when the insecure attachment styles date, and the insecure attachment styles often date. And that is your trauma bonding. And that is your, that is where a lot of the problems come in, because besides the fact that there's those initial dating things where the anxious person, let's say the anxious and the avoidant person gets together, and that's really like the major sparky thing where they can have very, very strong chemistry, because they ignite in each other their subconscious views of the world, right? Like the anxious person is used to inconsistent attention, right? And what does the avoidant person do?
Inconsistent attention.
They're very, they can be very charming and wonderful, but as soon as you want to get a little close, they run away, right? So it causes the anxious person to get more interested, and then pushes that person further away. The anxious person maybe gets sad, gives up, then the avoidant person comes back. Then you're in this toxic mess, right? Of constant push and pull. Why don't you love me? Leave me alone. But yes, I want to come back and I care about, and you're going through this constant thing. And I don't even remember your question at this point, but I just wanted to point out, why is it so bad when why is it so bad?
No, it's okay. It was more about how do we use that to date? So you're going to be out, you're vetting these men, you're trying to figure out who I should be dating. How do I even, I know I'm avoidant, I'm, secure, or
whatever your attachment,
whatever your style is. So now what? I'm sitting across from this guy at dinner. What do I use that information for? Except how do I know what he is, or figure out, or what am I looking for to make an informed decision, rather than oh my God, this guy is just so wonderful, hot, and chemistry is its own. You really bring up a good point, because chemistry often is probably, for many of us, trauma bonding, not even real chemistry, right? There's this sexual attraction, but a lot of that sexual attraction is also I want to be saved. I want to be, and we think we can do it with this person because we're so alike, we're simpatico, but you're right. It's our subconscious. It's not actually even, it's not real. It's not even based on real sexual attraction. It's based on trauma, something else going back here. And so you think this guy is I don't know why he's just so, I think I put a meme in my group, is this guy reminds me of my father. I think I like him. And the guy goes, I'm out of here. And she goes, oh, I'm in love. Right. But that happens, and we're not even aware of why we're doing it, but we think it's, I don't know, it's just, the way he walked out was so sexy. It's hilarious. We laugh about it, but it happens all the
Well,
time.
it happens all the time.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
what you're saying, and I'll add a little clarity to it, is that chemistry is a real thing for, and it's a good thing for two secure people.
Yeah.
That have healthy modeling of like emotional attunement from childhood.
Right.
So when the two of them fall in love, right, that subconscious stuff is happening. They're recognizing something familiar from childhood in this other person. They're like, oh, I don't know, it's just this magical experience. I just knew the minute I saw her or the minute I saw him. And, you know, and it's truly a magical thing.
Right.
But when two insecurely attached people, or when an insecure attached person feels that feeling of chemistry, they're also feeling some familiarity from childhood, but it's typically unhealthy familiarity.
Yeah.
And that's that trauma bonding that's happening, you know, and that's where we're trying to like we are actually trying to fix this trauma via this other person that's sitting across from us, or you know, that we're trying to date, and it often does not go well. And so
how do we, like, prepare ourselves now for that? Yeah,
I want to get back to your other question, which is you know, how do you assess another person? So it's almost impossible to assess another person on a date. You only know somebody's attachment style is based on pattern, right? So you wouldn't know that on a first date or a second date, you know. It would only be something that would come up over like some time, and you seeing what they're like over time, and how are they reacting, and are they you know, consistent in communication, or are they inconsistent, are they hot and cold, are they, you know, and all these kind of like small things that we've talked about. You can also ask them to take a quiz. That's helpful.
That always go direct.
You know, yeah.
I always say you got a summer and winter with somebody. Like you really have to we've got, I think we're getting back to it because of COVID, but you have to allow yourself to be courted and to court, to be engaged in the knowing of another human being, rather than the driving of an outcome. We're all in masculine mode so much. I want to produce the result of relationship. And we want to do it in the shortest, most efficient, effective way possible. And so the goal is, I'm going to date 30 guys for 30 days and pick one and attach to him and whatever I'm going to do. And I'm going to have a boyfriend in 6 months. Or however that looks, for most of us, because we're driving for a result. And I'm not saying don't go for the result. I'm saying in your process, allow space for process. Like be in the process. People want to just accomplish the results. We went out 3 times. He likes me, I like him. Check the box. We are now together, and that's the end of it. Take some time to get to know him. How do you know that? Like, people don't spend enough time to do this. Somebody else was saying that. I don't remember. I read it on some other somewhere. Some other psychologist was saying it's such a rush to the finish line. You don't even know what you're getting or who you're getting in the mix.
No.
All just rush to get that title and a date on national holidays, that we don't spend the time to actually know who we're dating on this national holiday. I mean, you got this guy or woman all in your Christmas life, meeting your family, meeting your friends, you're taking them all around, and you've known them for less than 30 days, telling everybody this is your new boo. And, you know, 45 days later, it's done. It's like, it's like over. He was a crazy person, right?
Yeah. And well, that's part of the, you know, it's part of the, you know, you're mitigating getting hurt again, right? Like this is everything that we do is like mitigating pain. We just don't want to get hurt. We just don't want to be in pain. So we want everything to be good. So we drive it towards good. Even if it's bad, we ignore the bad, ignore the red flags. We, you know, just kind of like, oh, but this was good, but you know, and it gets smaller and smaller, right? Like, oh, he was so attentive, and he was so like, he was calling all the time, and he was planning all the dates, and oh, well, I planned this date. Oh, well, you know, I called him 3 times and he didn't call me back. Oh, you know, and it gets smaller and smaller, but you're still back here with this fantasy of what, you know, what you started, rather than being in the reality of what is. And recognizing that this is not, you know, this is not a good good thing, you
Right.
know, or that he's treating you differently now, or you're learning something new about him, but you don't even want to see that lesson,
No,
right? Because you're so like, you want to be here.
right. And in your mind, you're in your mind, you are there. That's where you live
Right.
in whatever was happening in the
Right.
beginning and not now. And
Yeah.
and that's a piece of it. When you rush to try to attain a result, it's kind of like eating ice cream. You don't buy ice cream and then shove the whole thing in your mouth. You like lick the cone and like you savor it,
I
right?
do.
Or you eat. You do.
No, I'm
Right,
kidding.
right. But you lick the cone, you savor the flavor, you know, or you use the spoon, you get toppings,
Right,
you
right.
get sprinkles, you
Uh-huh.
add little things, you savor
Uh-huh.
it, and then you sit back. What you're once the result of I've eaten the ice cream is done, you go, I
Uh-huh.
really enjoyed that, or that wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be. But there's a space there for you to like evaluate.
Uh-huh.
We're like, oh, I'm just going to shove it all in my mouth and eat
Right.
it. And you're off to the next
Uh-huh.
thing. You miss so much richness and goodness. And if you use ice cream as a metaphor, you miss all the deliciousness. Like there's
Yeah.
something about the way the ice cream melts on your tongue, the sweetness of it, or the tang, the fruit, the nuts,
Right.
the toppings, the
Uh-huh.
everything. And you're missing all that if you're just shoving the whole thing in your mouth and moving on with your life. So yeah.
Yeah.
What would you say are your top, one or two things we could, do with attachment styles like today to support us, one, in moving toward the next level? We could take the quiz. Once you have the
Uh-huh.
information, what would be your first next step? And then what would be the big thing that we could do, one thing we could do on a date or in the process that would really kind of give us a glimpse into that person?
So what's one thing you can do once you learn your attachment style, then you have to start like practicing the opposite of what's comfortable for you.
Mm, yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's like a really big thing for anxious people. It might be look something like stop dating, because more than likely the anxious person is constantly dating,
Mhm.
constantly.
I know that person.
Yeah. Not comfortable being alone,
Yeah. I
constantly
know a
like,
couple of those
yeah,
people. Oh
yeah,
my gosh.
yeah. So
Yeah.
that might be, that might be a big step, right? You could take smaller steps to start, but spending time alone is really important. Learning to date yourself, and all of this stuff, like it kind of sounds cheesy, easier said than done kind of stuff, but it's that's why the subconscious work is so important, because I can tell you to do that, right?
Mhm.
But you won't do it and you won't believe it until you've done the subconscious reprogramming side of it. So that is why that part of it is really important, and then for an avoidant person on the other side, it's go on more dates. It's start to be vulnerable with the people you're comfortable that you can be vulnerable with, because avoidant people have like really hard time with vulnerability, right? So start expressing yourself in ways and places that you wouldn't normally, right? And that can be very small. It could be in the grocery store.
Mhm.
It could be with somebody, a good friend that you feel comfortable with, and then eventually extend that to dates. But again, these are all really kind of surfacey
Right.
things, because if the work underneath isn't done, then you might try it once, fail, and then retract completely,
Right. The real work that you should be doing with attachment styles is to find a professional to work with. Flora is available. She's got a program that actually specializes in this, and you guys should really, really check it out. I'll be putting that in the links in the end of this, because this is not something you're going to be running out to be vulnerable with, or running out to stop dating. Like, even if you, to your point, you tried it once or twice, it's not the kind of behavior that would stick, because it will feel counterintuitive, unnatural, uncomfortable, even downright fearful, or trigger your avoidant or anxiety mechanism,
Right.
to make you just go back to doing what you've been doing, because it's so foreign to you.
Exactly.
So,
Right.
taking the test is a great first step, but I'm a huge advocate of not going it alone when it comes to doing things like this. In particular, I know a lot of ladies will say, my picker's off.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the picker though. That's the place that's off. And
Right.
if, the definition of insanity is to keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And our picker's off because we keep trying to fix our picker ourselves instead of actually getting support, which is what I was talking about, to go through a process. It's not going to happen overnight, but get with, Flora, a professional, to go through a process that helps you retrain your picker or get to know your picker or love your picker, however that is, so that you can be the one directing who you want to pick instead of being at the mercy of your subconscious going, get that guy because I know that guy, right? And you're like, I don't want that guy. And he's still like, get that guy. And you're like, all right, we're getting that guy. And next thing you know, you're on that same merry-go-round for the 15th time and you don't understand why. And you don't have to do it that way.
Right.
And then, so what about just in general for dating, like surface level? What if some people are like, all right, I'm dating, I feel okay, or I'm a secure attachment style. So what would I do now with this information if I'm in the dating arena? How could I use that to actually be more discerning with my dates?
Well, you want to run for the hills and only date another secure person. I'm kidding.
I was going to say, so what do we, so I already have the advice for secure attachment people. Stop dating, avoid it.
No, I mean, it depends, different people are at different levels of their own attachment style. And it's very difficult to say. I don't know that I can give one piece of quick advice like that. I'm trying to think of something, but yeah, it's just not coming to me because it's not about finding the right attachment style necessarily, but it is about finding somebody who is open, who understands themselves, who's working on themselves, right? Who can admit when they're wrong. And, you essentially in dating, the one thing that I think is the most important, forget love. Love is meaningless in dating, by the way. What is more important is that you feel safe with the person that you're with. And that you can resolve conflict together in a healthy way.
Yeah.
That doesn't destroy, isn't destructive, right? To the relationship, to your emotions, to that feeling of safety.
You said something that was really important. I think it's important to highlight is, somebody that you feel safe with, somebody you feel you can talk to, resolve conflict with, that like, and the reason I'm latching onto this is because we keep wanting to look for, my love language is quality time. I want a quality time guy, right? I know attachment styles. I'm going to be vetting for secure attachment because I only want that guy because he's going to be okay with my proclivities, right? Now that I know that I'm seductive style this, I want a man who appreciates this. Like, instead of really just looking for someone, like it actually doesn't matter that your quality time and he's words of affirmation if you guys can resolve that as an issue, if he can be respectful of the fact that you like quality time and actually give it to you, and you can be respectful that he likes words of affirmation and give it to him. That's actually what's really important. It's not actually trying to have this puzzle piece fit together.
Exactly.
It's really about, no matter what his attachment style is, love language is, seduction style is, if he likes women tall or short or whatever you like, can the two of you come together harmoniously, really, and be appreciative of each other and give each other or meet each other's needs in some way and be willing to do that? Because so many of us get in a relationship and it's like, well, if he's not going to be a quality time person, I don't even want to be bothered with him. Well, he might be a phenomenal acts of service person and a words of affirmation person. He might not spend as much quality time, but you could have a really great, deep, meaningful, intimate relationship with somebody, and you're like throwing him away just because he doesn't want to spend that extra hour and you do.
Right.
We do that a lot. He's not 6 feet tall. He's not whatever. And that's, it's not about finding the match in that way. It's about finding who you're really compatible with, and you guys are willing to work towards creating the kind of relationship you want.
That's the thing. Yeah. It's having somebody that's open, and open to the conversation and open to working. And we don't get that a lot, and we don't know how to garner that because we're not taught to, and that's part of why I think dating coaching these days is so important, because we're not living in that world where there's 5 people where we can choose from that live in our village that, and that's it. This is all we get. Now we have a world, like literally you can date anybody anywhere in the world today.
Anybody anywhere. And that's a lot of sorting and sifting, and it's time consuming. If you're looking for like this perfect fit, instead of what I always say, the person that's perfect for you. And all that takes is you really being willing to be open and vulnerable and have someone else share in that experience with you. They're being open and vulnerable. But to your earlier point, the first thing you said is we don't know how to do that.
Right.
We just don't know how to do that well. And that's that's the biggest challenge, whether you know your attachment style or not, whether you know your love language or not. Can you sit across the table from somebody and actually be open and vulnerable and show them the real you so that they can actually get to know the real you and you can get to know the real them.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts you have for us tonight?
Final thoughts. Yeah, go learn about your attachment style. I mean, it will change your whole, it changed my life. I imagine it will change yours as well.
This is like the new hot thing. And when I first heard about it, I thought, this is like really amazing. What is that? And I kind of briefly Googled it. I was so glad that you said, oh, I talk about it. I'm like, oh, great. Now I have like firsthand knowledge of it, because it sounded like something that was, when you said subconscious, I thought, oh, this is super valuable, because that's one of the biggest things that we have trouble with. We don't know why we do the things that we do. We still keep doing the things that we do.
And that's, for me, that was the really important link, because it's one thing to understand your attachment style. It's another thing to understand that it's a link to your subconscious programming and the way that you function. And really, that is the bigger piece of this, right? Is that when you really start to understand your subconscious, and it's not to say that you can control it, right? That's a really important point too, because but when you can understand it and know why you're motivated and what motivated you to take that action or react that way, then you can start to make real adjustments that are really life-changing, rather than just, kind of surface level. Well, I'm just going to block him because he's a jerk. And then I'm going to unblock him the second I get a little like nervous and scared. And then I'm going to block him again because now I'm pissed again. And then I'm going to unblock him again. Right. Like we go through these, and the whole thing is to transform that. And you can only transform that from the inside out. It won't happen, from the outside in so easily.
Yeah. I totally agree. I want to thank you so much for coming here tonight, for dropping some gems, some wisdom for us. I will drop your website. I will drop the quiz into the Facebook group in the comments. Awesome. And certainly refer people to you to talk about this. And I'd love to have people, maybe after, we could even do a quiz and talk about people's results and do some Q&A too. I think it's a valuable information for us to know how we work, so we know how we work when we're in the dating arena. And I think that is really, personally speaking, priceless. When you know who you are, then you get to own who you are and share who you are with whomever you choose, and they get to love you for who you are. And if they don't, you get to be okay with that too. So that's the important part. Yeah. Awesome. I love it. Well, thank you so much for being here. I'll drop your comments I'll drop your information into the comment section of the show. Okay. And thank you again. And we'll have to have you back soon.
Thanks. Yes, I will definitely come.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
It was awesome.
Have a good night. Have a good evening.
You too. Okay.
Bye-bye.
I think to myself, what a wonderful world.